And Caitlin Clark, she's shooting the ball from 32 feet, pulling up from the logo. And these ladies in her league, they're upset. They don't like it. They don't like that she's getting all the publicity, the big sneaker deals. I got no problem at all with them shoving her. I mean, they're trying to intimidate her. They're trying to get her not to go to the rim, not to make certain passes.
Reports have surfaced claiming that Herbert Simon, the billionaire owner of both the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever, allegedly walked into a meeting with team executives and made a declaration that could reshape the entire WNBA. According to these unverified reports, Simon reportedly told management, in no uncertain terms, that the Indiana Fever is now Caitlin Clark's team, not just in spirit, but officially organizationally from the top down. That if these claims are true, it would mark one of the most significant power moves in the history of women's basketball. But here's the important part. We need to separate what's confirmed from what's being whispered behind closed doors. Before we dive deeper into what allegedly happened, let's establish who we're dealing with and why this matters. Herbert Simon is now 90 years old. Born in Brooklyn in 1934, he and his late brother Melvin built the Simon Property Group into one of the largest real estate empires in the United States.
I've said when she gets to the WNBA, she's going to be surrounded by more talent. And I didn't know the quality of talent that she has on that particular roster. Yeah. That's all true and they're healthy. What are you're not going to be to throw the house at her. She's going to be to come off of screens and catch and shoot.
His net worth sits north of $5 billion, according to Forbes. Simon purchased the Indiana Pacers back in 1983 when the franchise was on the verge of collapsing, and he's now the longest tenured owner in NBA history. When the WNBA expanded in 1999, Simon stepped up and brought a women's team to Indianapolis. The Indiana Fever have been competing since 2000 for most of their history. The Fever have been a respectable franchise. They won a championship in 2012 with Tamika Catchings, reached the finals 2 more times, and built a solid reputation. But let's be honest, for years, they weren't drawing major national attention. They had loyal fans in Indiana, but they weren't moving the needle for the league overall. Then came April 2024. The Fever held the #1 pick in the draft, and they selected Caitlin Clark, who had just broken the NCAA scoring record at Iowa. And overnight, everything changed.
Not that I've been told. I don't anticipate, a certain level. I'm not a huge fan of minute restrictions. I think that's silly. I told them, I don't want to come back unless I'm 100% full go. Why would I be out there to play 20?
Clark's rookie season in 2024 shattered every attendance record the Fever had. The team averaged the highest attendance in the entire league. They sold out 16 of their 20 home games, and road opponents even moved their games to NBA arenas just to handle the massive crowds come and see her play. The numbers were unprecedented. This wasn't just a talented rookie joining the team. This was a cultural phenomenon the WNBA hadn't experienced since its earliest years. Now, here's where things get complicated. Social media reports recently began circulating claiming that Simon held a private meeting with Fever management and head coach Stephanie White. According to these unverified accounts, Simon allegedly made it clear that the franchise should be built around Caitlin Clark, that every major decision should center on what's best for her development and long-term career, and that she should have significant influence over the direction of the organization.
Clear about this? If Caitlin Clark were not in the WNBA, we would not be talking about the WNBA. She's the only ticket draw in the WNBA. A large percentage of all tickets sold in the WNBA are so people can watch Caitlin Clark play basketball.
Some versions of these reports even use the phrase Caitlin Clark's team or the acronym CCT. But we need to be absolutely clear. There are no credible news sources confirming that this meeting happened or that these words were ever spoken. No major sports journalists have reported it. The Fever organization hasn't commented. And Herbert Simon himself hasn't made any public statements. So at this point, we're dealing strictly with rumors, speculation, and possibly some wishful thinking from fans. But here's what we do know for certain. Before the 2025 season began, the Fever underwent massive organizational changes. In November 2024, they brought back Kelly Kroskoff as president of basketball and business operations. Kroskoff previously oversaw the Fever from their founding in 2000 through 2018, including their championship run. She knows the franchise inside and out. They also hired Amber Cox as chief operating officer and general manager. And most importantly, they brought back Stephanie White as head coach.
I thought she got fouled. You know, I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. You know, a minus 31 free throw discrepancy.
White isn't just any coach. She's a Purdue legend who won a national championship there in 1999. She played for Fever from 2000 to 2004 and previously coached the team from 2015 to 2016, posting a 37-31 record. An Indiana native through and through, her return wasn't a random decision. It was deliberate, sending a clear message about the type of leadership the franchise wanted. Then, in January 2025, the organization announced another major move, a $78 million investment in a new practice facility. This isn't a small renovation. It's a 3-story, 108,000 square foot complex, complete with 2 regulation courts, advanced training areas, and wellness facilities, all scheduled to open before the 2027 season. Investment of this scale don't happen unless ownership is serious about competing at the highest level. So, while we still can't verify the alleged meeting or the exact words reportedly spoken, a clear pattern of intentional behavior is emerging.
I think there's a double standard in how people get their calls. I think Kelsey Mitchell, number one, is held or chucked on every freaking possession and never gets a call off the ball. I think Aaliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the league.
The Simon family has poured resources into the Fever in ways they never had before. They've assembled an experienced leadership team and committed serious money to infrastructure. These are the actions of an ownership group that's content to merely field a team. These are the actions of people who see an opportunity and are willing to invest in it. Now, what about the relationship between Stephanie White and the front office? Social media reports claim there's friction tension over how much control Clark should have. Disagreements about roster construction. Again, there's no confirmation of any of this. What we do have are White's actual public statements. After the 2025 season ended, she spoke about her team with genuine emotion, calling them one of the most special groups she's ever coached. She praised their character and toughness, words that don't come from someone in constant conflict with her organization. There was, however, one situation during the season that raised some questions.
Ready to start ramping back up and make sure, you know, it's completely different when you're just doing one-on-one workouts and when you're out there in 5-on-5, getting up and down the floor, moving laterally. So she's been allowed to do some practicing.
Veteran forward Dana Bonner, who the Fever had signed before the season, stopped playing for the team in June. She was officially listed as out for personal reasons, but credible reports indicated she had no intention of returning. When White was asked about it, she gave a brief response, saying she hadn't had many recent conversations with Bonner and was focused on the players she had available. It wasn't hostile, but it wasn't warm either. The franchise later traded Bonner. Whether this situation had anything to do with Caitlin Clark or organizational direction, we simply don't know. Here's what else we know about the 2025 season. It was brutal for Caitlin Clark personally. She battled a series of lower body injuries that limited her to just 13 games. Left quad, left groin, right groin, left ankle, one issue after another. In early September, the team announced she was done for the season. For a player who had carried enormous workload at Iowa and played through everything, this was unprecedented. And yet, despite losing their biggest star for most of the season, the Fever fought their way into the playoffs. They upset the Atlanta Dream in the first round and pushed the Las Vegas Aces to a decisive Game 5 in the semifinals before falling in overtime. The Aces went on to win the championship, which means Indiana came remarkably close to finals. That performance, largely without Clark, proves something important. The organization had built a real team, not just a showcase for one player. Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and others stepped up in massive ways. White's coaching proved exceptional, and the infrastructure put in place by Krosgoff and Cox worked. So when we circle back to the rumors about Simon allegedly declaring this to be Clark's team, we have to ask, would he even need to? The evidence suggests the organization was already operating that way. They made major structural changes immediately after drafting her. They invested unprecedented money in facilities. They brought in leadership that understand how to build around a generational talent. Whether Simon actually called a meeting and spoke those exact words or not, the actions speak for themselves. if the reports are accurate. Such a directive would represent a level of organizational commitment that's rare in professional sports, especially for a player only in her second year. It would mean her input on roster decisions carries real weight. Coaching philosophies would need to align with maximizing her abilities. Essentially, the entire operation would run through her. For Stephanie White and the coaching staff, it would create an interesting dynamic. White is an experienced coach with strong opinions about how the game should be played. She's not a pushover. But if ownership made it clear that Clark is a franchise foundation, White would need to build her system around that reality. Based on what we saw in 2025, there's no evidence that's been a problem. White and Clark worked well together during the limited time Clark was healthy. For the rest of the roster, it sets clear expectations. Players joining the Fever know they're there to complement Clark, not compete with her for attention or resources, which could actually attract the right veterans seeking a championship opportunity alongside a generational talent. For the WNBA as a whole, it could represent a significant shift in how franchises approach building around stars. The league has traditionally been more egalitarian, but if the Fever openly structure everything around one player, and it works, other teams might follow that model. Here's the bottom line. We can't confirm the specific claims about a meeting or explicit directive from Herbert Simon, but we can confirm that the Indiana Fever have reorganized their operation in ways that suggest Caitlin Clark is absolutely central to their plans. Whether this came from a single dramatic meeting or a series of calculated decisions, the result is the same. The Fever are betting their future on her, and they're putting real money and resources behind that bet. Time will tell if it pays off, but they've certainly committed to the path. What do you think? If you were running the Fever, would you build everything around one player, even a talent like Clark? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more coverage of the WNBA and women's basketball, make sure you subscribe.